Hi everyone, I'm Bia, and welcome back to Critic Radio for Teens. For those of you who don't know, Critic Radio for Teens is a place where teens can come together with other teens to learn about Spiritist teachings and topics in a way that makes more sense to us and is more relatable to us as teenagers in today's society. So, at Critic Radio for Teens, we've been reading through the Gospel according to Spiritism together, and we've just been going page by page, section by section, chapter by chapter, trying to learn and process, understand, and apply to our lives these words from Jesus and from the spirits. So, the Gospel according to Spiritism is laid out as, it gets Jesus' words, right? Jesus' stories from the Bible, and it explains them because Jesus often spoke in stories to be more clear to the people of the time, because the people of the time that Jesus came were very simple and they couldn't understand these complex ideas, especially not for the first time. So Jesus introduced these ideas as little stories. But now, sometimes people get confused as a story because they want to take the story literally, or people just interpret it differently. So here the spirits are laying out, this is what Jesus said, and this is what we should interpret from that, right? This is what he meant. So it's really helpful to better understand these teachings that Jesus was bringing to us. So last week we finished off chapter 10, which was Blessed are the Merciful, right? So we talked a lot about forgiveness. And today we're going to start with chapter 11, Love your neighbor as yourself. And we've all heard this rule, right? So it'll be interesting to see exactly how Jesus said it, what the spirits have to say about it, and also think about how we can apply this to our daily lives, because we've all heard this so much, right? Love your neighbor as yourself. But how many of us still don't do that, right? Even I don't do that all the time, right? We aren't perfect here, and we all don't love all of our neighbors. And by neighbor, we mean anyone on this earth. And we all struggle with that still. So that's why we always hear it, right? Because we always have to work on it. So first to bring some parts of the Bible where Jesus mentioned this. And this section is titled, the first section is titled, The Greatest Commandment. But when the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees gathered together. Then one of them, who was a lawyer, tested him with a question. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. That is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the laws and the prophets. Matthew 22:34-40. So here, right, when Jesus was like they were trying to test him, they were trying to trick him, they said, what's the greatest law? And he said easily, right? Love God with all your heart, all your soul and your mind. And then the second is love your neighbor as yourself. And he said, they're similar, because if you are loving God with all your heart, soul, and mind, if you're truly dedicated to God, then you would also be loving yourself, loving your neighbor as yourself, because God wants that for us, right? So to follow God, we have to show God we, love him with all of our heart. We have to follow the rules that he has put in place for us, and we know that God would want us to love our neighbor as ourselves. So, and everything else, right? To show that we love God, we should do the right thing, right? Try and be the best we can, not forgive people like we talked about last week. So by doing everything else, that is showing our love for God. So that sums it all up, because if we are showing God our love, then we're doing all of those right things, right? We're doing all those good things already. And again, the second, love your neighbor as yourself. So, and what that means is, right, to just be kind, respectful, and everything you would want to you, right, to your neighbor, right? And not to your physical neighbor, just the house next door, but neighbor meaning not in your immediate family, but everyone else, right? Everyone else on this earth that we come in contact with. And then there's another part that Matthew said in the Bible that goes along with this that says, "Therefore, in all things whatsoever, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this is the law and the prophets." So, again, right? And so this is in Matthew section 7 and 12. Verse 12. Right? So that's, again, what we're summing up. If you are loving your neighbor as yourself, right? Doing to others what you want to do to you. Again, we're treating others respectfully. We're being kind to one another. We're showing our love for other people who are God's creation, and that will make God happy, right? That will be us showing our love towards God by loving His creations, right? Being kind to one another, because that's what He wants for us. So, again, doing to others what you want them to do to you is the law, right? Is how we're going to be happy, how we're going to help other people. Think of how much good comes from that. And it's also interesting that it seems so common sense, because why would we not treat people how we would want to be treated, right? If we don't want to be treated that way, why are we treating other people, right? If we don't want people to be mean to us, why are we going to be mean to other people? So it's almost so common sense, right? Of course, let me treat someone how I would want to be treated. If I don't want to get yelled at, why am I going to yell at that person? If I'm going to make that person upset, but I wouldn't want to be upset. But oftentimes it just slips away and we don't think about that. So that's why we have to keep hearing this, right? And keep going over it again and again, because we all still struggle with this, even though we've heard it so many times. And then just to reiterate what was just said, in Luke 6:31, it says, "Do to others as you would have them do to you." Just like that, just one simple sentence, right? It doesn't even need more explaining because we've heard it so much. And Luke just reiterates, right, that Jesus said this. That was an important concept. And then there's another part of the Bible from Matthew 18:23-35, and it goes, "Therefore the kingdom of heaven is compared to a certain king who wishes to settle accounts with his servants. And when he had begun his reckoning, one servant who owed him 10,000 talents was brought to him. But as he was unable to pay, the master commanded him to be sold, together with his wife and children, and all that he had, to repay the debt. The servant fell on his knees before him, saying, 'Master, be patient with me, and I will pay you everything.' Then the master of that servant was moved with compassion, forgave the debt, and let him go. But when the servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. When upon he laid hands on him, taking him by the throat, saying, 'Pay me what you owe,' his fellow servant fell on his knees and his feet and begged him, 'Be patient with me, and I will pay you everything.' But he would not. Instead, he went off and had him put in prison till he paid the debt. So when the other servants saw what he had done, they were very sorry, and went and told their master what had happened. The master called the servant in and said, 'You wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you begged me to. Shouldn't you also have had compassion on your fellow servant, just as I pitied on you?' And his master was angry and turned him over to the jailers to be tortured, until he should pay back all that he owed. This is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother from your heart. So, right here is showing in a simple story, right? This servant owed so much money to the master, right? Like 10,000, we can say dollars, right? So like $10,000 he owed to his servant, but he didn't have it. So he begged the servant, no, please, 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 I'll get it to you. Just be patient. And the master felt bad, right? The master was like, okay, I'll give you a chance and let him go so he could, continue to work for that money. But then the servant found someone else that only owed him $100. So, right, $100 compared to $10,000 is a little amount, but he only owed $100, and he attacked that person and wouldn't let them go because they didn't have the money, and then got them put in jail. But think about that, right? Love your neighbor as yourself, right? Do to others what you would have them do to you. You begged that person to forgive you, to give you a second chance, but you're not doing the same to another person, right? That doesn't make sense. If you're receiving that compassion, why shouldn't that other person receive that compassion, right? And so when the master heard about this, he said, no, like if you're going to treat people that way, then I'll also treat you poorly. I'll also get you put in prison because, right, I gave you a second chance. Why wouldn't you give that person a second chance? And it seems pretty clear now, but a lot of times this happens in our day-to-day lives that we want that second chance to do something. But when it comes to us forgiving someone and giving someone else a second chance, we're really hard on them. But how many times are we given a second chance, right? How many times are we shown this compassion? So it's really an interesting thought to keep in mind. And then it continues. To love your neighbor as yourself, to do to others as you would have them do to you, expresses the most complete form of charity because it summarizes all of man's obligations towards his fellow men. We can find no guide to take as any example that is more guaranteed in this respect than that we should do to others what we would have them do to us. Whatever right we have to demand that they behave in any better manner, that they be more benevolent or more devoted to us than we are to them. The practice of these maxims lead to the destruction of selfishness. When they have been adopted as a rule of conduct and at the base of all institution, then man will understand true fraternity, and so making it possible for peace and justice to reign on this planet. There will be no more hate nor dissension, but only union, concordance, and mutual benevolence. So here they're showing the power, right, of this law, of this rule. Love your neighbor as yourself. Do to others what you would want them to do to you. It shows, like they're saying, if we all followed this type of charity, right, this most complete form of charity, right, being so kind to others because we want to be so kind to ourselves, if we showed everyone, right, this charity and everyone had this, the earth would be at peace. The earth would have true fraternity, right, true friendships, true kindness, and there wouldn't be any more hate. Because why am I going to hate someone? Do I want to be hated? No. So why am I going to hate someone, right? How am I going to hate someone if I don't want people to hate me? Or how am I going to hold a grudge on a person and not forgive them if I would want them to forgive me? So if we are just able to do this, this simple phrase, right, that they're saying, our world would be completely different, right? And like they're saying, it would be the destruction of selfishness, right? We wouldn't be selfish because we'd be thinking of other people. Because not just about us, right? It's about how we interact with other people. What are we doing with other people? And as we know, doing nothing is not good enough to improve, right? We need to be actively doing the good. So maybe you're not mean to that person, but maybe you just ignore them. Maybe you just do nothing. But would you want to be ignored, right? Is that the kind thing to do? No, right? So we have to actively go out our way and try and be nice to people, which is very hard. And that's why our earth is not near there. And we're all working on this, but try and implement it in your life more, right? Try and when you feel yourself getting mad at someone, try and forgive that person. Or when you're judging someone, or when you're talking bad about someone, try and stop yourself and be like, wait, you know what, never mind, because, right, I wouldn't want someone to judge me, and I have a lot of things, right, I have a lot of flaws that people can judge me about, and I don't want them to judge me, so let me not judge them either. And once we start doing these little acts, it'll become more natural, and it'll help us follow this law that's so important. And then the next section is give to Caesar that which belongs to Caesar. And now there's another section from the Bible, and it says, Then the Pharisees went out and laid plans to trap him in his word. They sent their disciples to him along with Herodians. Teacher, they said, we know you are a man of integrity, and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. You are not swayed by men, because you pay no attention to who they are. Tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar, or not? But Jesus, knowing their evil intent, said, You hypocrites, why are you trying to trap me? Show me the coin used for paying the tax. And they brought him a denarius, and he asked them, Whose portrait is this, and whose inscription? Caesar's, they replied. Then he said to them, Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's. Then they heard this, and they were amazed. So they left him and went away. Matthew 22:15-22, and Mark 12:13-17. Right, so that is a very interesting story, and the spirits go into kind of explaining it. So instead of us explaining it right away, let's hear their explanation. The question that was asked of Jesus was motivated by the fact that the Jews, who abominated the tribute imposed on them by the Romans, had made the payment of this tribute a religious question. Numerous parties had been set up against this tax, so this payment constituted a point of irritation among many of them at the time. If this had not been the case, there would have been no point in the question which was asked of Jesus. Is it licit for us to pay or not to pay this tribute to Caesar? There had been a trap set by this question, because those who had said it expected the reply to go against either the Roman authority or the distant Jews. But Jesus, who understood their malice, got around this difficulty and gave them a lesson in justice by saying that to each one should be given what was due to them. So here they're giving a little bit more of the background, right? So what was happening is that they the Roman authorities, right, and the Jews. So Roman authorities were pushing this tax, right? That this tax, you had to pay all this money to Caesar, while the people of that time, right, the common people, of course, didn't want to be paying these ridiculous taxes for no reason. So when these people came to Jesus, he knew that it was a trap, because rather he said, oh yes, we should have the tax, in which if he said we should have the tax, then he would be supporting the authorities, and then the common people would be upset at him. Or he would say, oh, we shouldn't have the tax, and then the authorities would be upset. So he knew this was a trap and a tricky situation. So that's the kind of situation they were putting in him. So that's the background. And then it continues. However, we should not understand the words, "Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar," in a restrictive or absolute manner. As in everything that Jesus taught, this is a general principle that has been summarized into a practical and more customary form, taken from a certain circumstance. This principle is the consequence of the other one, in which we should do to others as we would have them do to us. It condemns every kind of moral or material damage that might be caused to another, as well as all disregard for their interests. It prescribes respect for the right of each person, as each one desires to be respected. It extends as well to the fulfillment of our obligations toward our family, society, and authority, as much as for individuals in general. So, Jesus, and how they're explaining it here, right? Jesus isn't saying that for all situations, give to that person whatever's theirs, right? So if one person has all of it, right, they're not going to share. They're just going to keep what's theirs because that's the right thing. No, it's not an absolute, right? It's not restrictive. It's not saying, okay, actually give everything, right? Actually give all your money to Caesar because all of the money has Caesar's face on it. No, don't give all of it, right? That's just a way of him explaining the situation. But what we can take from this is, like it says, our obligations towards our family, towards society, towards our authorities, right? These are things that we have to do, right? These obligations that we have, and maybe obligations to individuals, right? Individual members of our family or friends or whoever. And we have these obligations, so fulfill them, right? If we said we were going to do this chore, right? Do that chore, right? If you were asked to do that chore, just do it, right? It's like they're saying, right? If do to others what you would want others to do to you. If you have someone that you have to, let's say, supervise, right? One day when we have our own kids, we're going to want them to listen to us, right? So why don't we listen to our parents when we're told to do simple tasks, right? And we're not told to do everything ever, right? We have breaks, we have our own time, we're doing our own thing. But occasionally we have to do what's obligated of us. So do it, right? He's saying, just do it. It's easy. Get it over with. It'll be respecting that person instead of throwing a fit, right? Getting angry at that person. Because do we want someone to throw a fit with us, to get angry at us? No. So it's just showing this fine line that material things, right, aren't important, right? If someone wants the last piece of cake, right, why are you going to fight over it? Okay, fine, you can have it. It's just a material thing, right? We can make another cake a different time. So, again, it doesn't mean we have to give absolutely everything, right? If Caesar's face is on the coin, we don't have to give him all of our money ever, but just in the sense, right, if this is the rule of the land right now, right, to give this tax, then just do your part, give that tax, right? Maybe work on a positive way to change those rules, right? Work to start something positive to change it. But in the meantime, right, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, right? Do what you're obligated to do, and others will do what they're obligated to do towards you. So that's what they're showing us here. So that's where we'll leave off this week. And next week we have the instructions from the spirits about these teachings that Jesus brought to us, right? About this, love your neighbor as yourself. But right now, right, we should try and just apply that to our lives more. When we're doing something negative to someone or something we wouldn't want someone to do to us, think about that and stop ourselves in that action, right? Even if we stop ourselves halfway through and be like, you know what, never mind about what I was just saying. But work on that slowly, because that's what we have to do, right? We know this phrase. We know what Jesus was saying. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love everyone as yourself. Do to other people what you want done to yourself. But we still don't practice it, and that's why it comes up so much. So try and put it into your daily practice. Try and put it into your life. So before we leave off, I'd like to read our message from the Daily Book of Positive Quotations by Linda Picone for today's day, January 14th. So this one's titled Stages. Start by doing what's necessary, then what's possible, and suddenly you're doing the impossible. One step at a time, one step at a time, that's all we can do. But it can be more than enough. There are things we have to do each day. Go to work, care for a child, prepare a meal. And there are things we do because we want to. Volunteer for a community organization, host a party for a friend, plant a garden. We bustle about happily doing all that we need to do, plus the things that bring pleasure to ourselves and others. We might be intimidated by the amount of work involved, but by simply doing things, we can accomplish more than we think. Instead of thinking about how I can't possibly do something I want to do, I'll just start doing what I can and see where it leads. Right? And that's what we talked about, right? Focus on little things, right? On things we can do, right? Stop ourselves in those moments, right? Treat others kindly. And start with little things, right? Give someone a compliment. Don't judge them. Hold the door open for someone. And the little things will start snowballing, right? Into like a snowball going down a hill, getting bigger and bigger, and affect us way more than we ever thought those little things could. If at all you guys ever have any questions or comments, suggestions, anything at all, feel free to email me at cardiacradioforteens@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you right away. I'm Bia, and this has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening. This has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.